Hey guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Éire's Epics in History. I'm your host, John Fisher. How's everybody doing? I hope you're all well. I'm all right. I have a tiny bit of an injury. I'll show it to you right now. Yeah, it's right here. Nothing to worry about, just a small little sprain. But yeah, basically, 2 weeks ago, I was running and I stepped on this huge branch, and my foot just, yeah, got a bit banged up, and it was still hurting. So I went to the doctor, and they told me it was a small sprain. They took an X-ray. I'm okay, but yeah, they just put a little bandage around it, so should be good as new, they say, within the next week or two. I just got to take it a bit easy, so I'm not going to go running this week, which is a shame because I do like to run, but, doctor's orders. Anyway, welcome to another exciting episode of Éire's Epics in History. Like I said, I'm your host, John Fisher, and today we're going to be talking again about Wolfe Tone, whom we discussed him a bit yesterday, just to jog your memory a bit. He joined the organization, the United Irishmen, in 1791 when it was established, and he was very popular in the north of Ireland among the Presbyterian businessmen. They really liked his calls for reform. And fun fact, even though he was born into a Protestant family, he was actually a supporter of Catholic rights, and he wrote a pamphlet on the rights of Catholics that was published in 1791. Anyway, he eventually is forced to flee from Dublin, where he set up the United Irishman branch, but unfortunately that branch was suppressed. A French agent he was talking with was compromised, and he was forced to flee to the U.S., and then he goes to France, where he encourages a French invasion. And he's actually, in a sense, and successful, but we'll get more into that a little bit later. But anyway, so in October of 1798, he was actually on a French expedition to Ireland, and the ship he was on got captured by the British Navy. And he was recognized and betrayed by an old college friend, and he's taken to Dublin, where he's tried and found guilty by court-martial and sentenced to be executed. He's put in prison, but he actually commits suicide before he's even executed. Now, basically, what happened is, at this time, around the 1790s, we're still seeing more risings occur. There was a rising around the early 1790s in the southeast, and then in 1798, there's rebellions in Antrim and Down. And basically, I would go into them, I just don't have the time. But basically, what ends up happening is William Pitt, at the time, is the Prime Minister of Great Britain, and he gets very worried about continental enemies using Ireland as a way to undermine the British and attack the British, and getting into their territory and attack them. And an example of that is the rebellions in Antrim and Down. Actually, were the French actually joined the Irish in fighting the British. So that's just one example of how even though they lost, that's just one example of an attempt by a foreign power to use Ireland to attack the British. And basically, he originally had this proposal to make Great Britain and Ireland a free trade state, to take the two nations and make them a free trade state. But because of the events in 1798, because of these rebellions, he decides, you know what, I'm I think we should unite them as one country. That way, you know, we'll have more power to defend ourselves, because he realized that military action alone in Ireland wasn't enough to keep foreign invaders from trying to attack Britain. Again, it all comes back to Great Britain's protection and all these foreign invaders and whatnot. Or not even invaders, I should say, just foreign powers trying to invade and trying to fight the British and the growing Protestantism movement. So he makes the proposal, and in 1799 it goes before the Irish Parliament, and the motion fails by a vote of 5. So, the Irish Parliament isn't interested in combining with Great Britain. But the British, they don't give up. They use bribes. They offer bribes and honors to overturn the vote. They even use propaganda and compromises to try and change it. And then in 1800, it goes before the House again, and it passes this time in a vote of 158 to 115. And so on January 1st, 1801, the Great Britain and Ireland combined together to become the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. And basically, once this happens, things severely change for the Irish. Now, as even though they're one nation, they're still two separate islands. Ireland being the poorer and smaller island, which gives Great Britain the ability to take advantage of it and just basically try and control it. And the members of the Irish Parliament are now members of Westminster, and they have homes in London rather than Dublin. So that's another issue. They're away from Ireland, and they can't really step in to truly defend it on Irish soil. They're in Westminster rather than in Dublin. And Dublin itself loses its gaiety and grandeur. It continues to grow, but it loses that element that makes it truly quintessentially Irish for the times. And also, this didn't really have much of an impact on ordinary tenant farmers. They were still facing a lot of the same challenges and whatnot. But what the act of combining Great Britain and Ireland, which was known as the Act of the Union, what the Act of the Union really does is it causes Ireland, it gives Westminster the ability to pass these coercion laws. And with these coercion laws, it gives Great Britain the ability it gives British Parliament as well as law enforcement the ability to arrest, imprison, and basically transport people. Basically just gives them more control over the Irish, and these laws are often enforced with injustice and cruelty. Now, in the north of Ireland, in Ulster, many of the magistrates and the juries are composed of Orange men. Now, the Orange men are part of the Society of the Orange Men, or the Orange Society. Basically, it's a society that was constructed in 1791. It's made up of Protestants who, 1795. It was created, and it's made up of these Protestants who were afraid of the relaxation of the penal laws against Catholics, including those regarding land tenure. You have to remember that the Protestants, while, yes, they are the dominant population at the time, they are still a minority compared to the Catholics, and so they're always keeping that in mind. They always feel they need to be protected. And there was this small local group called the Peepa Boys, who were the defenders of Protestantism, and their Catholic equivalent were the defenders. And basically, the People Boys, they end up resorting to violent tactics in order to try and get their way, in order to try and defend Protestantism. And in fact, in 1795, they're formed on the day of a battle known as Battle of the Diamond, in which they confronted and killed 30 Catholics. And they met up later that night in the house of one of the members of the People Boys, and they basically agree to become this organization known as the Orange Men, or the Orange Society. And what they do, and what the Orange Men are all about, is defending Protestantism and the British Crown against rising Catholicism. They fear these rising Catholic classes and whatnot. And so during the early 1800s, we see the influence of these Orange Men growing. Now, between 1823 and 1845, Parliament actually made being an Orange Man illegal because of the sectarian violence they resorted to in Ulster. But even so, they still continue with their violent actions. They still parade around openly in society, and they still get into fights and resort to violent tactics to fight against Catholics. And this violence becomes so great that in the 1830s, a parliamentary inquiry is launched into the influence of the Orange Men, including the influence they hold as magistrates and juries in Ireland. So, in Ulster, in Ireland. So yeah, that basically just gives you a bit of an idea of how Ireland changed beginning in 1801 with the establishment of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland through the Act of the Union. And this is just the very, I don't want to say this is the beginning, because the events of the past have been leading up to this for some time. But this is where it definitely becomes official, and it really is a turning point for Ireland over the next century. And, we're going to get into that later on in the next few days about how this changes with the Irish War for Independence. But for now, that's all I got for tonight. So hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for following me, and please share this so we can continue to educate the world about Irish history and how great it is. So thanks, and have a good night.